Okay. Happy Thursday, y'all. I keep saying I have a poor connection, so we're having terrible weather rolling through tonight, so I wonder if that is related. Hopefully not. Hey,
Hi.
are you in Houston?
No, I'm in Austin.
Oh, okay. So do you have the terrible weather coming through also?
Yeah, it's doing something outside.
Yeah, I know, because my connection, it keeps saying like really weak connection. I'm sitting right by the Wi-Fi.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's been a little rocky today.
Oh yeah. So welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara, and I have with me paranormal, sci-fi, and fantasy romance author Stacey LP. Welcome, Stacey.
Hello.
I'm, I'm so glad we're able to move this up.
Me too. I'm very excited to be here tonight, especially since it's so cold out. I don't want to go anywhere else, so hang out with someone in my office.
Yeah, I think it's snowing there. You guys are forecasted for snow. I know Dallas is getting snow. Houston is
No,
not.
we're not getting any snow, thank goodness. I moved to Austin from New York to escape the snow, so
Like, no thanks, been there, done that. Yeah, my family's from Minnesota, so yeah, I did the whole like trick-or-treating in the snow, plastic costumes, that whole bit, right?
yeah, definitely don't miss that.
I know, it's so much easier living here. I say that until hurricane season comes along, and then, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently tornadoes too. I learned that my first year.
Oh, yeah. I had damage from both the tornado and the hurricane last year, so that was fun.
Oh God.
Anyway, moving on to more fun topics. So, that is quite the genres: paranormal, fantasy, sci-fi. I know to me it's an easy bridge to gap, but I know for readers, not always. So, what
Yeah.
one did you write first, and what one is your major love?
So what I just released back in November is a dystopian post-apocalyptic sci-fi. And it's a trilogy. So I'm still in the middle of that world. But I've also been playing around a lot with like dark fairy tales, and I'm also about to write a short ghost love story. And honestly, like since I've been a little kid, I've always been obsessed with like the weird. So it just kind of naturally pulled me in. Yeah, like I've been writing my entire life, and I've explored like so many different genres, but I think what's really held my attention with like sci-fi and fantasy is just that I get to really let my imagination run wild.
Yep. Okay, so let's back up. Tell everybody the name of your series. It's so good.
Yeah, so my series is called the Afterglow Rising Trilogy, and book one is out now. It's called Afterglow Rising from the Ashes.
Yeah, it just came out, what, November 24th?
November 15th.
15th. That was close.
Mm-hmm.
But I think too, congratulations on that. We'll get into book 2 and 3 in the trilogy. But to speak to what you said a moment ago, I feel like growing up, and this is not meant to be an insult, but it kind of ends up being one, is traditionally published houses determined what we would read, how
Yeah.
we would read it. And so if your book didn't fit in the true, like Stephen King or Dean Koontz or Nora Roberts or those blueprints, if it
Right.
was an outlier, it just didn't get published. I feel like self indies and the whole indie market exploding
Mm-hmm.
has created all these subgenres, all these new works that we were never able to see before. And I think it's wonderful. I mean, I am an indie author and supporter through and through, because you do have readers that read across all genres, and people love ghosts, they love paranormals, they love magic systems, they love what's not the norm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting too because like growing up, my favorite series of all time was Animorphs. And of course now I'm writing about aliens too, but the recently I've been reading a lot of, romantasy and rom-coms, and the writer group that I kind of fell into is completely romance authors. So when it came time for me to do like alpha and beta readers and finding arc readers, a lot of my audience kind of came from that universe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been an interesting crossover because I think, especially with indie authors, because we have so much flexibility to really play around with our genres and connect with the readers and our audience, there are so many different elements that end up kind of like combining together, and it's created this really cool world where people who might not normally read sci-fi have found my book and they're like, I would have never read this normally, but I had such a great time.
Of course. I think, as indie authors, and I know especially romance authors, our readers are voracious. The quantity and volume that they read is unbelievable. There's no one author that can support that kind of demand. And so they are willing to go and dabble, and they'll read anywhere from clean, sweet romance all the way to like the most blocked, taboo, etc. And so when they've kind of exhausted that, then they go out and they dabble in romantasy, paranormal romances, so to me, the lines get blurred really quickly. But I love that because for readers, it's like a plethora of choices.
Yeah.
As an author and a marketeer, it's kind of challenging.
Yes. That part's definitely been interesting.
Okay, so take us back into your trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
You have book 1 out into the world. Wonderful, yay! And is that your debut? Because I saw it was.
It is, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations, that's exciting. So how long did it take you to write that? And then where are you at in the next book in the series?
Yeah, so I was laid off in a mass layoff back in May. And
I'm so sorry.
yeah,
that's getting a lot more common from other authors and other business people in the publishing industry. I'm hearing that more and more, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I, my full-time day job is in tech, and that industry is a little rough right now. Definitely a little rough. But I've been working at this company for 10 years and literally never planned on going anywhere else. But I have a master's degree in English literature. And I just kind of fell into the tech world, as one does.
Okay.
So when I was part of the layoff and I lost my job, my friends were like, Stacey, this is your moment. You should write this book, because we've been toying around with like throwing around random ideas, and I started writing something that eventually did turn into what Afterglow is now. So I started writing actually at the beginning of May before I got laid off, and I think it took about 2.5 months to draft, because that was literally my job during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully I had a severance that helped to kind of carry me over until I found a new day job. But that also allowed me a lot of free time during the day to literally devote all of my time towards writing this book. And it's like, it's so hard to describe, because it's like the whole story just kind of happens in your head, and then it's a matter of like getting it down on paper. It was like one of those moments. So my husband always jokes around that, like, of course you would decide to write a book and it would become a trilogy. And that's kind of the definition of who I am. I like to call it my too much gene, because I can't just do one simple thing. It always turns into a major project. So
okay, well, here's the tech term for you: project creep. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
We used to talk all the time about that, because I at one time I was over the IT department in my career, which, scary as it is, like you said, you fall into it. But yeah, we call it project creep. But can we pause right there one moment before we continue on with the trilogy?
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Because I know that a lot of people are facing challenges. A lot of people are being unexpectedly laid off when they thought, I'm going to be here forever. And there are a good worker. It's not like you were a problematic, and so the layoff comes and they're like, okay, well, these low producers are out the door.
Yeah.
So can we talk about how your friend came to you and said, yeah, you should do this, but where the rubber meets the road, where we have these dreams and where we have reality, it's kind of hard to traverse.
Yeah.
So take us through that process of you getting comfortable doing that.
Oh gosh, yeah. It kind of became a coping mechanism.
The writing.
Honestly. Yeah, yeah. Because I was just so heartbroken
Mm-hmm.
because I never, I didn't plan on leaving. I loved my job, like genuinely. So being able to kind of immerse myself in that world, it actually, I think, helped me process everything that much more because I was doing something productive. I still had an everyday schedule that I was subscribing to. It's just I was doing something that was more creative. So I have kind of it's kind of bittersweet because I wouldn't have been able to write that whole book in that amount of time if I didn't get laid off, but it'll always still kind of like be connected. But I think it's one of those lemons into lemonade type of scenarios that ended up working out for the better, honestly.
Well, I would imagine it stings
Yeah.
because when you are producing, you had plans to be there, and then you had to make this transition. Are you saying that you poured some of that, like maybe mourning and loss into your book, into the words, into the characters, and it was cathartic in a way?
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially because Afterglow does take place in this like dystopian post-apocalyptic society where
Mhm.
it's like everything you were before now suddenly doesn't
Wiped
matter.
away.
So yeah, so it's kind of like I was going through this change of identity, like trying to figure out who I was as my characters were like, okay, well, I used to be in marketing and now I am hiding from aliens. It was definitely interesting to kind of like combine the two. There was a lot of like it was the right time, like it helps to get all of that out in a way that turned it around from something that, was absolutely like depressing and heartbreaking and devastating into, now I have that emotion kind of like tied into another story. Like I transformed into something else.
I love that. So you're saying though that this book is always going to be close to your heart because it represents kind of that time that you were
Yeah.
struggling. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because let's be honest, writing a book is on many, many people's bucket list. And there is a ton of people that work in corporate or they work jobs they love or they work in careers being, well, they'll be in them forever. And then all of a sudden something happens, the layoff, the job transfer, someone gets sick, someone passes away, and so it's those hard pivots that were unexpected.
Right.
And so I like how you've talked about the emotional journey of that because I think that helps out a lot of people
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like there are so many people going through the process now. And, something you said earlier was it's not a matter of even being good or not good at your job. It's just circumstance, which kind of takes that power out of your hands and leaves you in this place where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I have control over right now?
Yeah, right. Because at some point you had to decide, okay, even though you have a severance package to tide you over,
Yeah.
do I look for a new job? Do I continue in this industry that I love? Or do I make a hard life change and do something radically different? Because tech is, one side of your brain and creative
Yeah.
arts is another, even though you have your master's in it. You hadn't used it. And so I would imagine that was quite the process to go through to make that hard pivot and to stay true to yourself. I always tell people, we as authors, you decide to be an author every single day.
Definitely.
And so I think if you could just speak to that a little bit about like how in the world did you make such a critically big decision?
Yeah, so I had a lot of support from my partner.
Oh.
He was very supportive of me taking that time, and like part of it was definitely dedicated to the job search. I did get hired since then, so I have a new day job now, but a lot of my time was dedicated to writing. And I think having him just be not just supportive, but like enthusiastically creating that time for me to take for writing when who knows if it would have even gone anywhere. Like I think that was one of the most crucial parts of it was being able to have that space to begin with. And I think that as especially an indie author, that type of support and community that you build around yourself, that really helps to kind of set the stage for how you move forward, because I think you do need that type of supportive community behind you too, because we're learning everything on our own, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very like one person show, so being able to have those people to rally behind you and to go to for advice, or even just like, man, like I'm stuck right now, and have someone be there to help you move forward, like it really does make all the difference. So I
agree
really
with you. I do tell people all the time, you know, if you don't have that circle of influence that supports you around you, reach out to those of us authors on Bookstagram, because you may not have it in your household or in or amongst your friends, but you'll definitely find it online. And to, you know, DM your favorite authors or get into the Bookstagram community and find those members that will support you in your journey.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like the indie author community, and especially the Bookstagram community, I found is just so nice and warm and welcoming. I've never slid into so many DMs in my life, and just everyone's so receptive. They're like, oh, hey.
I know, that's what I love about it. You know, that's a good side of social media, because I think you put out what you get back, what you put out. And there's so many of us that are just trying to rise with the tide. And so that's why I do these author interviews, because I want to share you with my audience and, you know, help support other indies.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, like everyone just seems to rally behind each other. And especially for an online community, let alone any community, like that type of support, like it's wild.
Well, it's everything too, because since you said we're kind of like a one-woman show, you don't always know what you're doing, and you can watch YouTube channel, you know, like YouTube videos to figure it out. But sometimes you just need to run it by another author and be like, hey, how did you handle KDP, KU, you know, you name it, book covers, blurbs, etc. I mean, there's just so many. It's kind of like death by 1,000 decisions. Sometimes you just need someone to, you know, run it by.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I had so many questions.
So pivoting onto book 2, where are you at in that process? Because now you have a full-time job. Congratulations.
I do. Thank you. I am about 15% of the way through the first draft, which is actually ahead of schedule, which is good.
Nice.
But I have a lot of it plotted out. Whether it sticks to that plot, TBD. Because you know how stories go sometimes. They can have a mind of their own. But I actually recently, just this past weekend, I had a little trip with a couple of my writer friends from the community.
Nice.
It literally spent the whole weekend writing. So that was a huge chunk of my goal.
Doesn't that make you feel so great though? Because sometimes when we have those writing retreats, we come out so inspired and the words just flow out of you. And then also you have ideas for the direction that your book is going to go.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. It was the best weekend.
So you said you're ahead of deadline. Take us through your process. Faster. Look at her, faster, Stacey, right? Faster.
I'm trying, Chris, I'm trying.
She's eager for book 2.
So I'm very data centric. So I kind of looked at the timeline that it took me to write the first book. And from there, I kind of reverse engineered a timeline for book 2. So looking at, you know, the amount of time that I have to write now compared to what I had to write before, I looked at, you know, how long did it take me to edit? How long did it take me to go through the different drafts and work with my copy editor and go through proofreading?
Oh yeah.
And I ended up with a timeline from there, but a lot of it was actually, I put a lot of thought into my release dates. And I saw that Friday the 13th is June 13th. And I'm like, this kind of works with my timelines.
Yes.
That's the timeline for book 2, June 13th. Friday the 13th. I like those memorable dates, you know?
Of course, they're symbolic. I just released one on New Year's Eve because it was the last book in the last series, and it literally is like there's a big ending tied to the town that it's set into. So I totally understand. Are there any other Friday the 13th in 2025?
I think there is. I can't remember which month it falls in though.
I love that you reverse engineered it. I think that's so critical. And when you come from the corporate world, you know that everything's done by reverse engineering.
Oh God.
So I like that you take a really tactical approach to the creative side. So then are you saying to us, and understand you wrote the first draft in 2.5 months, but then you also had a lot more time. Are you saying to us that you're going to have it released in June, which is 5 months, the whole process written, edited, everything, and released?
Yep.
Ooh.
I spent a lot of time the first time around doing a lot of research though. So a lot of the critical book development did take place during that time when I had a lot more flexibility. So luckily, a lot of that has been taken off my plate now, and I can really just focus on the writing part of it when I do sit down to write, which is a lot more productive than I thought it was going to be.
How so? Do you have like a writing schedule?
Yeah, kind of. So I have different goals for each day of the week. So like on the weekends, I have just a higher word count that I aim for. But I found that during the week, like I usually write after my kids have gone to bed, or they're 3 and 5. So they definitely need me to still stay in their room until they fall asleep. And I have a lot of writing there.
Yeah.
So it's really like finding those pockets of time. And I find that during the day, I'm thinking about it so much that when I do get to sit down and write, I've gotten really lucky so far where the words just kind of have been coming out. And because I have that outline that I've been working off of, it's helped to kind of guide the process too. So I feel like this time I know more of what I'm doing and how to work with my timeline, whereas before I was literally throwing something at a wall and hoping it stuck.
Well, I always say that first book, not even the first draft, but the first book is figuring out what type of writer you are. Do I write at night? Do I write every single day? Do I write in huge chunks? Do I write with other people? Music alone? It's just figuring out who you are. Yeah. And so I love how efficient you are with your daily goals. I mean, we're all about daily goals around here, you know, because we got a big life to lead. And so how do we get it done?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with babies, you know, because I love little babies, 3 and 5. And I know what you're talking about, because when they want you to like lay in bed with them, I used to write on my phone, you know, the notes app, or, you know, like your little thumbs and everything, but it works, right? Because we need to get the words down.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at least 40% of Afterglow Rising from the Ashes was written on my phone like this, laying on the floor, waiting for them to fall asleep.
But that is like the realest mom statement ever. Like, we just have to make it happen because you have your goals, but also everybody needs a piece of mom.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like one of my friends, she always jokes about how she's the human jungle gym while she's writing. And I always thought that was so funny.
How so? Because they're all over her?
What?
How so? Because they're all over her?
Mm-hmm. She has a toddler and a baby at home. Her name is Amanda Marquardt. And yeah, she is one of the writers in my group that we just have a lot that we relate over. So
nice. Okay, so if we have book 2 coming out June 13th, then in your reverse engineering, how long does it usually take you to write? And do you think book 3 will be out in 2025?
I think so. I'm aiming for the last day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that when I do set a due date for myself, that's my biggest motivator. In college, for example, there were many papers that I wrote the morning they were due, and my claim to fame is writing a paper the morning it was due on a book that I hadn't read yet, but I got an A- on it. So clearly I work well under pressure.
Say the least.
But I think having that background and just getting used to that, like, okay, now it's sit down and write time. It kind of helps to get like stuck in that mindset where it's like, okay, now this is what I'm focusing on. But yeah, I'm aiming for December 31st for the last book, because it's also one of my best friend's birthdays, and she's been a huge supporter of the book, my friend Jenna. So I really want to release book 3 on her birthday.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you know, the thing about it is how efficient you are. I think it's going to happen, right? Like you
Definitely.
said, I mean, you're really a champion for deep focus work, and that is hard.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of get obsessive, so it's working in my favor with this project, but
Well, do you think it's because you're so efficient because you do have limited time and so you're having to make the most time? Because I know that there are some full-time writers that have a very disciplined schedule, but some full-time writers don't because they're like, I have all day and la la la, and they don't get their word count in.
yeah, there were a lot of days like that actually before I started working again, where I would be sitting in my room all day, but I'd just be like staring at my computer until like 5 p.m. hit, and that was the button where it's like, okay, now it's all coming to me. So I guess it kind of works that that's my writing time, because that's when the workday ends. And I don't know. I think it's just I'm a nighttime person in general.
Well, it's also one of the things you have to find out about yourself is, am I a morning writer? Am I a night? But I think, you know, as a mama, we always have to, like, it's everybody's needs ahead of ours and then ours at the end of the day.
Yep. That's definitely a huge part of it.
So where did you get the idea for this dystopian? Because you also have paranormal, you also have sci-fi. So take us through what is coming next.
So there are a couple projects that I'm working on currently.
Ooh.
I have a short story going to be part of a dark fairy tale anthology. Release date still TBD, but it's I'm really excited for that because it's a whole big project with a lot of other indie authors from mainly romance genre, but we have some who are kind of leaning more to the horror side and
Ooh.
like really dark romance. So it's going to be a really interesting anthology for sure. The
Is it
story,
2025 or 2026?
yeah, 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yes. And the name of it is Dark Fairy Tales for the Unloved.
I like that already.
Collective. And then also one of my friends, R.A. Hunter, and I, we're working on a queer anthology. So we just started putting that together. We have a couple of authors that we're partnering up with. So timeline still TBD there, but that's where I'm really going to be leading into my ghost story.
Okay, that is really interesting. So you're saying it's going to be all queer stories, or is it going to be queer authors writing their stories, or a mix of both?
Both.
That's really cool. So will you co-write with her, or are you guys just coordinating this anthology?
So we're going to be writing in the anthology as well. I think we have, oh gosh, how many authors do we have now? I think we are up to 7, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so really the main theme is queer stories. So there's no like overarching, it has to be in this specific genre. So from what the stories that people have started writing so far, there's some really interesting ones that are going to be part of this anthology too. So I'm really excited for it.
I feel like that's so underrepresented. I feel like there needs to be, well, there's not as many queer romances or just queer stories as there should be.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're not writing that, I know it's kind of an intimidating space for those that do not write in that and then want to take a stab in it, because you want the authenticity, the realism. Are you guys still looking for authors to participate, or is it closed?
I'm pretty sure it's closed now, at least for the time being, because we can't make it a too huge of a project, but yeah.
Okay, so when is that, a 2025 or a 2026 release?
CD for
Okay.
that one. Yeah, we're working on the timeline there.
Okay, so that's going to be a ghost story. What is that going to be for yours? Or what, generally what idea do you have for yours?
So I've had this like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a movie in my head with these scenes. That's like where most of my stories come from, where I just start to see these flashes of images. And I just kept seeing this story with like a lot of like dark foresty vibes. And the
Mm.
main character is someone who passed away, but then also like what does that crossing over period look like? And when you're trapped like between the veil, like how do you know you're dead versus alive? And a lot of those questions just started kind of pouring through my head, and that's where the story started forming. So it's still in the process. We'll see where it ends up, but I'm definitely feeling like dark, foresty, gothic vibes. And I've been wanting that for my entire life.
Okay, but I find that sounds so good already, because those are questions we all ask, right? Regardless of your belief, we're all the same, that we will die and no one knows for sure what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And I just think it's so interesting, especially, coming at it from a non-religious perspective where you don't have someone telling you this is what happens after. It's really, you know, anything could be the possibility. And like, I think that energy has a lot to do with it. And like, because that's literally what we are. We're made of energy. And where does that energy go? Does it go back into the earth? Does it turn into something else? And then when you start to play around with those ideas, that's when you can really start to build these other worlds.
Okay, I have like a little story to tell you really super fast. Because my sister and her partner, or her wife, my sister is lesbian. And so her mom was telling her this over Thanksgiving or Christmas. But anyway, there was a haunted store that had 70 spirits, and they called a nun in to help them cross over. So I'm gonna have to DM you the picture, because the cleaning crew, like, they would go in, like, let's say you go into like Gap and all the shirts are folded neatly, all the whites, the blues, all that. Every morning they come back into the store and it would be in total disarray. And so they were like, what in the heck is happening?
Oh
And
man.
the cameras weren't catching, but the cleaning crew was like, it feels like, people are around me. And this one worker said, every time I go upstairs to go get the inventory, I feel like there's a heavy weight on my back. And turns out it was a little boy who thought the store was so much fun, he would jump on the worker's back. But I'm going to send you the picture that
Oh,
the cleaning crew happened to catch, and it is freaky deaky.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So I'm going to send it to you, and then we can continue that conversation in the DMs, but it's crazy.
I worked in a haunted movie theater in college, and my friend and I went ghost hunting as a hobby for a while too.
Because that's what we do on the weekend. Okay, so did you feel spirits? Like, were they around you? I don't know. That would freak me out, girl. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, they gotta be
That's really
cast for the ghosts. I gotta know them.
because, like, I don't know. It's such a weird thing because part of it is maybe in your head, part of it is maybe happening, and you don't know like which part is really real because there is that like almost placebo effect, you know?
Yeah.
But then there are those things that happen where you literally cannot explain it. Like when I was a projectionist at this movie theater. So it was a small 4 theater movie cinema place, and I would be the only person upstairs. There would be no customers. The only other person in the building would be down in the office. And I would hear voices in
Girl.
the hallway leading from the front of the projection room to the back. And there would be footsteps that I would always hear in that hallway, like running up and down. There would be like touches on my shoulder, like all kinds of stuff like that. And that was actually okay. It was the front there that I refused to go in alone. Because I don't know, just bad vibes there.
Okay. You're brave because no, I'd be like, this girl's out of here. Thank you. Do not come home with me. Don't attach yourself to me, etc. One thing I forgot to tell you is this clothing store was an antique furniture store before that. I said, oh, no, 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 because that furniture is traveling with the spirits. Like they're bringing it in and they're bringing something else in.
Yeah.
But those spirits, they didn't know they were dead.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to cross over. They were like stuck. And so that's what this nun was doing. I think there was like an article or a story. So if I'll reach out to my sister and have her send it to you, I'll DM you. But she had to tell them like, you're dead. And one person was like, no, I have to go make amends or restitution to someone that I had murdered. And she's like,
cool.
Too late. So, but to your point, and when you talk about, beyond the veil, some of them don't know. I just thought, I was always taught like there's a tunnel and you either go one way or the other and that's it. But she's saying there's not.
I believe it.
Yeah. Now that I'm going to have to say extra prayers tonight after this conversation.
Just here to bring the nightmares.
I will share that if I have one. I will DM you. Okay, so this is what happened. Okay, so you're talking, that's 4 works though, because that's the dark anthology, that's the queer anthology, and then the 2 books.
Yeah.
So do you have a timeline for all those? I know you said TBD, but also you have to, I don't mean a timeline for them, but also a timeline for you to actually get that work done.
I do. I have a whiteboard that I set up in my office, and it's literally full of dates. It probably looks a little bit like a murder board at this point, or I would show it, but
it's like red,
and like
strings,
colors.
I love it though, because the visual, I know you've looked at it a couple times tonight.
Yeah.
And it's great to have a visual of our goals to see like, okay, am I on track? I'm a little bit behind. How do I catch up, etc.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a very visual person. So having that right in front of me, and especially committing to it in live conversations where other people can hear you and follow up on the goals.
Ooh.
That's honestly what keeps me on track.
Yeah, you have a lot of accountability partners, whether you want them or not.
Mm-hmm.
So of the 4 projects, what else do you have? Because that then spans the fantasy, the sci-fi, and the paranormal.
Yeah, so I have a couple of stories mapped out too. Definitely future 2026 and beyond. But I have a romantasy rom-com that I've been wanting to write for so long now. And there were a couple other ideas too that I've had. Like they kind of come at those like random moments. So in my notes app, I have all of these ideas that sometimes I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that's still a good idea. Other times, like, what does this mean?
What was I thinking?
But I'm really, really excited for the fantasy rom-com. Because I don't know, I like my humor is kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's very much like I call myself a troll, but to myself.
Okay, you have to explain that. Trolls don't have the best connotation.
A good example of this is actually with Afterglow. So the release date for my first book, Afterglow, was November 15th. And I just kind of fell into this whole marketing scheme that I made up myself of the invasion starts November 15th. And I put that on all of my posts, all of that. In the book, I have the actual invasion starting November 15th. So
cool marketing.
Easter egg type things where it's like, LOL, it literally does start November 15th. That probably only amuse me, but
no. Well, your readers love, I mean, everybody loves Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in my writing.
Nice. Okay, so you were talking though about, oh, I lost my train of thought, about the tying it all together though. So if it had come out November 15th and you had your marketing, Why is that a troll?
um, that's not so much as trollish as what I usually do. Um, a better example is probably my husband and I, when we got engaged, we decided we were going to get married, but then we kept it a secret for months so we could announce it on April Fool's Day. So our family wouldn't know whether or not like it was an actual joke, but it wasn't a joke, it was real. So
Oh my
like
God.
little innocent jokes like that.
You
Oh my
guys are
God.
so good at keeping secrets. It says, and feral pigs, there's lots of feral pigs.
Yes. Feral hogs make a huge appearance in Afterglow. Yeah.
Do they mean something?
Literal feral hogs.
Okay, I didn't know if
It's
they're Easter eggs for something else.
they're just a character.
That's so funny. So you talked about plotting. So do you plot every book? Do you have book 3 plotted, or is it kind of just marinating?
Yeah, I do have the whole trilogy plotted out, but I do find that as I'm writing, sometimes things will change. Like there will be scenes that just kind of happen, and I just kind of follow them. So if I don't like stick hard to my plot lines, if the story is taking me in another direction, but I do have these major points that I know I have to get to for the story to fully come to life. So the big things that really tie it all together, like those will stay the same, but how the characters get there have definitely changed along the way.
Okay, that's impressive that you have both books already outlined, plotted.
Yeah, I think especially because I have such a tight timeline that I'm working off of too. Like, I wouldn't be able to have that timeline without it.
Yeah. Do you think maybe your degree, how much did that help you? Because I know a lot of people who want to be authors think, oh, well, I don't have a degree, so I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
But I always find it fascinating. How does it help you out?
Oh my gosh. It's something that I think about a lot because I've always wanted to write, and I've been writing all of my life. But as far as pursuing it like I am now, I don't think that I would have been able to do it at this capacity like 10 years ago or when I graduated. And the reason I say that is because with how I've focused on literature and my own writing, there's definitely been that transformation and growth. I think that, you know, obviously the more time you put into your craft, you will see changes and improvements over the years, but also too, the reading that I've done. I think reading is something that really influences the direction of an author because we do take pieces of whatever we read and that becomes like a part of us. So I think between, you know, my professional schooling and the different types of theory that I've learned and studying the classics and having that as a foundation, it's not, I wouldn't say like it's necessary for every author, but for me, I think that it really helped to shape the direction that I've gone in because there will be pieces of everything that I've learned along the way. Like I'm maybe writing sci-fi, but then there's also like postmodernism themes that are thrown in there too. And yeah, so it's all just kind of it's definitely a journey.
Do you
I would
think
say
it do you think it helps structurally? More so
definitely.
structurally and not necessarily on the creative side?
Definitely. Yeah, I think so. And a lot of it too is because I took a lot of writing courses, I was able to see a lot of other people's writing and other people's processes, but also critiques. I think that that feedback is so important to the writing process and being able to take the feedback and know what to do with it too. And whether it's, okay, well, this is a matter of personal preference versus this is a stylistic thing that can improve the direction of my writing. So I think that's a piece that can be harder for especially newer authors, the critique portion, because you do kind of have to be able to separate it and be like, okay, this is a critique, but it's not going to get past here, you know?
Oh, I think that's brilliant because I think what you just said, so many people struggle. And I'm one of the authors that, yeah, I do read every one of my reviews, the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Yeah.
because I am looking for that, right? I am looking for personal preference versus constructive criticism.
Yeah.
But you have to have like iron sides to do it because it can be brutal. Have you
Oh,
ever thought about, I know you're writing, but have you ever thought about taking your like MFA and condensing it down to like just a simple course for beginners, taking what you know to kind of incorporate those without having to go and get a whole degree?
I mean, probably not, just because I like working with my friends and kind of like when we work together to critique our work in like a circle where I know the type of feedback that they're looking for and I can kind of customize it to exactly what their preference is, you know? But
Smart.
to turn something that others could follow, I would be hesitant because I don't think I'm an expert. But I do think that a lot of it, you know, it does come from making those connections and being able to get to know people and what their feedback style is, what their communication styles are, and using that to help them on their journeys.
How did you find them? So you're actually not necessarily looking for beta feedback because you already have your critique circle. So how did you find them though? That's a lot of people are looking for because they may not be able to afford a developmental editor.
Yeah.
So they need to find, you know, a swap situation.
Social media. Um, right when I started this whole journey, um, there was a Threads post that I hopped onto, and this was before I knew what direction I was really taking Afterglow, and it was the very, very early stages. So I'm like, maybe it's going to be a romance, and there is love story to it, but I can't call it a romance. So I found this group of romance writers and they were like, oh, like what do you if I made a writer's chat, like would anyone want to join? And I'm like, oh, I am so down. And I just kept responding to all of these different threads, and one of them did turn into a group chat. And I got really lucky because I ended up vibing with a lot of the writers in that chat, and I've been talking to them ever since it was born. I actually just met two of them in person this
Oh,
past
neat.
example. But you know, there were a couple of us who we were working on our first novels together. We had the same release date, so that was really
That's
cool.
wild.
And I just volunteered to do a lot of ARC reading and a lot of alpha reading and beta reading to kind of understand what their processes were. And from there, you know, you do form these like strong relationships because especially when you're alpha reading or beta reading, you know, that's a very, I feel like, personal project, you
Very
know?
intimate.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, because, you know, you're asking people to get into your story before it's really ready. And
Yeah.
there's like an intimacy and a trust factor that they won't completely destroy you. Because I have worked with people before that they'll end authors' careers, and I'm like, then you're not with the right group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also being able to know when to step away, you know, because when it comes to feedback in general, I think, you know, it's twofold. You know, you want to be open to feedback, but you also have to know what your limits are. And if someone is coming in and their style just isn't matching up with how you receive feedback and it's demotivating, like it's perfectly fine to step away in those cases. And I think a lot of people kind of get scared of that because they don't want to make someone else feel like they're being rejected, or like what if they say something bad. And I think it just comes down to, you know, you have to be honest with yourself and honest with the people that you're working with, and there's a way to say no without, you know, tearing someone else down too.
Excellent advice, because I know that it comes also with style, right? You know, are you writing short sentences? Are you writing a lot of description, very limited description? I mean, I always think of like there's Hemingway, there's Shakespeare. I mean, so when you know, like Jane Eyre. I mean, some of them are very verbose, very descriptive. Others are not. You know, they try and do a lot more of it within the dialogue. So
Mhm.
it's really tough to know. And again, if you're with the wrong group, as your writer critiques, they're not going to get it. They're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that authors and those aspiring have to search for because, like you said, you learned a lot through reading. And we tend to write the way we read, or what we like to read is how we end up emulating, maybe not intentionally, but that's just how you get there. Yeah.
Definitely.
So what would you say has been the hardest part of being an author and then the easiest part?
Hardest is definitely marketing. I think that's what we all say.
Every last one of us.
That's been fun too. But I will say that was definitely the hardest learning curve. I thought I knew how to social media. I don't know if I know how to social media, but I think we find like what we're comfortable with and just kind of roll with that. Like I found out that I really like making reels. So I've been leaning into. But it took a while to figure that out and like also figure out, you know, a mix of what do you like to do with what also is going to achieve the goal of your marketing. Mm-hmm. So it's been fun, but very hard. And then the easiest part, I would say, that's tricky because there's like so many pieces where I'm like, oh, like this came so naturally, but I wouldn't call any of it easy. It's just varying degrees of comfort, I feel like.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Because you're so right. Like, you know, some people are graphics designers, and so they're like, covers are in my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, you have a tech background, so you're like, yeah, I could go wide. I can manage all these platforms. I have the infrastructure to, you know, be able to manage all my URLs and all that stuff. And other people are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. I have a little WordPress site. I avoid it at all costs. Like, as long as it has the most updated information, we're going to leave it at that.
Is that your website?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Do you not want it on WordPress anymore? Is WordPress really techy?
It's not. I just don't like it. The process of updating and creating new pages and yeah, so I have a very basic site that I'm like, okay, if people are looking for me, this exists. It points them in all the directions where they could find me and has examples of where to find my books, what my books are about, some playlists. But
Stacey, I feel your pain. I just revamped my website myself. I'm not techie. It was 8,000 YouTube videos.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and so it took me, I don't know, 20, 25 hours. I was like, and I have put it off all year and I rebranded, and, you know, the whole thing. So I'm pretty proud of how it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a struggle the whole time to get me to sit down. And I was like, you're doing it this whole week before, you know, I did it before Thanksgiving. So by Thanksgiving, you can wear your stretchy pants and you can be as gluttonous as you want as your reward for redoing this dang website.
I mean, good reward. It's all a reward system, right?
I wish that was the case, but no. So that's why I like when you talked about having daily goals.
Yeah.
What advice, though, because you've now made the transition, you know, you said you've wanted to write your whole life.
Yeah.
You finally took the plunge from private writing into published works. What would your advice be to those that are new and aspiring?
Yeah. So I think the best thing that you can do is really find ways to connect with other writers, because it can feel very isolating if you're in it by yourself, because you're literally in your own head. And I think being able to have a group where you could bounce ideas off of, or say, you know, I'm stuck at this part, let me just talk it through out loud. I think that's really what has lent to me feeling like I can continue with it, because not only do I have that group to be like, hey, I'm stuck, let me talk this out, but also, you know, you get really close with those people. And, you know, there are local writers groups that you can find on Facebook. Literally reach out to anyone on Threads or now Blue Sky or whatever social media is coming to life.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it really is as simple as just DMing someone being like, hey, I saw this thing that you posted. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Mm-hmm. I've done that. Sometimes they'll answer, sometimes they won't. But, you know, sometimes it really comes down to, you know, just having I call it the what's the worst thing that could happen theory, and thinking about, okay, so worst thing that happens, I reach out to this person, they never respond. Mm-hmm. Can I deal with that? Yes. Or, you know, but also on the flip side, you know, if I reach out to my favorite author and maybe they don't like me and I can't deal with that, then you can say no. Like, maybe that's not a step that I want to take because I'm worried about the rejection, which is valid, even though a lot of authors are just, they're so nice. I've had some really great experiences. So
you're right, though. If you don't ask, it's always a no.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, fear of rejection, I mean, everybody has that. We're human. Everybody wants to belong to somebody somewhere. So yeah, I think that's a challenging one to overcome.
Definitely. Yeah. And you know what? Anyone out there who's looking, you could always reach out to me. My DMs are always open.
Yeah, I slide into hers because she was sliding into everybody else's, and that way you said earlier.
Gotta pay it forward.
Before I forget, where are you located? How do people find you?
So I mainly use Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. Also on Threads at author Stacey LP. That's also my website, authorstaceylp.com. And I have a regular newsletter that you can sign up for at my website that I update sporadically, but with all the important stuff.
I love that. So they can join your newsletter. Well, this has been such a fun interview, and it's gone by so fast. I can't believe it's already been an hour. We could go longer if the platform let us, but they always cut it off. So what I do want to do is I want to have you back, and if we can schedule it around your book 2 release in June.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I will DM you when I DM you my ghost story.
Excellent. This has been so fun.
It's so fun, and that's why I like to connect with authors, because there's so many different ways to be an author. There's no one right way. There's no one, you know, road to do it. And so that's why I like to bring all different authors together, just to inspire people. Like, if you have a book and you write it, you'll find your readers, you'll find the community to support you. Mm-hmm. We're here. All righty. Well, I will cut it here, and then I will DM you later. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.